So I'm going to show you how I go about creating a site plan from the survey that I take. And I'm going to create a site plan in SketchUp, which is the CAD package that I use. So how do I take this document here, which is all my little notes and scribbles and measurements, and then use that to create something that I can then use to build a model with. So I'm going to walk you through that process right now. So one of the first things I do is I import this image here, which I take from Google Earth. I just simply do a screen grab, and I always make sure I capture this bit at the bottom here. This is the scale. Now it's not very accurate, but it's still going to get us to be the right size. So if I just draw a line down here, we're going to see right at the bottom right hand corner here that 5 meters on this image is actually more than 5 meters in the model. So first things first, we're going to resize it. And to do that, I come here to my tape measure, take it to the starting point, take it to the end point of that scale, press click, and then on the bottom I'm going to come here and just type 5. It's going to ask me if I want to resize the model, and it says yes. And what that's going to do is resize this image here so that that scale is exactly 5 meters. It's not accurate, but it does give us a really useful starting point to start sketching out the model. So what I start out with is this document here. This is what I do is I print off this page, and then I draw on it on site, and I add on my measurements and any features and things like that that I need. So what you will notice here is that in the corners I mark out letters, and then I mark out these distinct measurements in the margin there, just so that we've got those. So let's see how that works in the model itself. So we start off with this side of the house, which we know from the drawing is 6.8 meters. So we're going to just pop that in here. Don't need to be too precious right now. 6.8, type it in the bottom so that we get the measurements right. Now we know not all properties are exactly square, but this is a 1930s house, so I think we can assume that it's fairly square. We know there's some detail that mean that bits stand out than others, but for now we're just going to start mapping in the key dimensions. So we know that this dimension here, which is AG, is 9.3 meters. And you can see it's not lining up exactly with the drawing with the photo from Google, but it's a good starting point here. So, and some of the measurements that we take on site are such that we can't always get a straight line where we might want to. I'll show you some pictures. I also take lots of detailed pictures. So this is the part that we're looking at the moment. And this is where the deck dropped, so that's why we broke it down into individual parts. So I have to take smaller measurements and add them together. So this is a good example where we have a deck on site, and it wouldn't have been practical to have run a tape measure down here because the height difference would have meant that there was a sudden dip. So instead what I've done is I've broken it into 2 parts. So we've got 3.4 meters and then we've got 2.9 meters from the bottom part. I suppose another example is this dimension here, which runs from this point here, which I've marked as P, and then also this bit down here, which is L. So that we know that that's 17 meters along that line. So what I tend to do is to mark out individual points that are measurable, and then join them up as need be. So we know that this point up here, which is AM, is 5 meters. So I'm going to be going back and removing some of these lines later, but that's how we go about constructing the bit that we need. So this gate. So we're going to mark in 6 meters, which is about there. So in the drawing, we then have this curve that comes round here. We know that that comes like this. So those are the 2 points, and this is where having the drawings, having the photos is really helpful. Now, some people might be saying that I haven't drawn this curve very accurately on site, and there's an absolute reason for that. This particular project is what I would call a design in a day. It's quite a small project, it's a partial redesign, and because of that, I discussed with the client the needs of the project. If I was to take detailed measurements of every aspect of this curve, we would get it absolutely spot on and accurate. However, that additional time for measuring it on site and also me drawing it up at home here in my office would add quite a bit of extra time onto this project. So probably add another, I don't know, £100 to £200 onto that, which is out of scope for this particular piece of work. We've got to keep this quite accessible to my client, so it's about making sure that we choose the right level of detail for what we're trying to achieve here. This is for a concept, and if we need to go back and measure it in much more detail, then we can always revisit that, but this is so that we get a rough idea of the shape and the style of how we're going to do things in the garden. So sometimes you have to be more pragmatic and accept that you're not always going to get the level of detail that you might need for other projects. So this is where we're choosing to capture the key dimensions of the property rather than every single very detailed part of the curves. some of the more detailed bits around the house, for example. We need to be able to identify exactly where our windows and doors are, because our client in this particular case, this sunroom here, looks out into the garden, and this in particular was the area that she wanted to improve. So it's important that we get the windows and the doors in the right position so that we can work out what the views are going to be like when we do our finished concept design. So just going to zoom in a little bit here so we can work on the details around the house. To map out the windows, and you might be wondering what's happening with the distances. So how do I do that? So what I actually do is, let's zoom in here, is I run a tape measure from one side of the house down, and then I mark off where we have the edge of a window or a patio door in this case. And what that allows me to then do is that makes it very quick on site. So you can see I've got 0.06, 2.7, 3.05, 3.2, 4.2, so on and so forth. And what that then allows me to do here is I then start marking those distances off on this line. So I can mark them off as windows and doors. So I do a little offset, and then I do these funny little lines jutting off, join them up to create some windows and doors. And that's just my shorthand way of doing it. Saying that some of these features, so here I've drawn in where these patio French doors are, and you might say, oh well, that doesn't really line up very well with the image. So the image that Google Maps takes is a satellite image, and as you can imagine it's taken from above and it's at a slight angle, so it kind of warps some of the features a little bit. So I know that my measurements that I've taken are correct. So the image is a useful guide, but it's not definitive. So for that reason alone, we can't really use that to draw the garden just from the Google Maps satellite image. But obviously in this case, it's been quite useful in being able to kind of map out the significant features. added some textures just to mark in the different surfaces that we've got. So we've got this kind of pale green for where we've got grass or grassish surfaces. We've got this darker green for where we've currently got foliage. We've got this kind of very pale grey colour for the gravel. We've got this darker grey colour for paving, and brown just delineates where we've got wood. Now it's really approximate because we know we're going to change quite a lot of this stuff. But as you can see, it means that from now on, we can see where the significant features are, and that gives me a really useful blueprint that I use for drawing out my next phase, which is the concept. So what I do here is I just start marking these in, and I can use tags within SketchUp, sorry, to hide things and to make things visible as I want to make them. So I don't actually need to delete this Google map at all. All I do is I add in a new tag. So add a new tag, and I'll just say Google Maps, and assign this image behind it to Google Maps. And then when I want to, I can just turn it off to create a cleaner image of the site. But it is useful to put it on because not only does it have that parent information about the context around here, so it shows that down here we've got the woods, this is the neighbour's property, this is my client's property, and this is the other neighbour's garden. It also shows our north-south directions. So at the moment I don't worry about this too much when I'm drafting in some aspects of the concept, but certainly I'll be coming back to this when I'm thinking about aspects like sun, shade, microclimate, and which parts of the garden are likely to be sunny or shaded, and where my client might want to do specific activities like sitting, eating, short breaks, or rather longer periods of time doing entertaining, that sort of thing. So thank you very much for looking, and we'll see you soon.